When most people think of Virginia estates, they think of white columns and rolling green pastures, old money, horse country, and founding fathers beneath oak trees. Virginia has over 40,000 properties valued above $1 million, but scattered across its counties are estates whose histories are so deeply unsettling that locals actively warn outsiders to stay away. One property sold for over $3 million despite five documented deaths on its grounds. Another has been listed and removed from the market 14 times. These are 15 of the creepiest millionaire estates in Virginia, and locals warn you not to visit. Now let us begin. Number 15. In the town of Leesburg, Loudoun County, sits Selma Mansion. Built around 1902 in the Beaux-Arts style, roughly 11,000 square feet of brick and limestone, listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Loudoun County is one of the wealthiest counties in the United States. Land here regularly sells for more than $1 million per acre. And yet Selma has sat empty for years at a time. Windows boarded, gardens gone to seed. County property records show a chain of owners whose tenures rarely lasted more than a few years. One bought it, began renovations, and abandoned the project within 18 months. Another held the title for just under a year before transferring it without explanation. The assessed value continued to climb even as the house deteriorated. A preservation officer with Loudoun County once noted that the property seemed to resist permanence, not in any supernatural sense, in a financial and psychological one. People simply do not stay. A registered historic mansion in one of the richest counties in America that no owner will keep is quietly unsettling. But drive south into the Shenandoah Valley and up Afton Mountain, and you will find an estate where the problem is not that owners leave. It is what they built in the first place. Number 14. Swannanoa Palace sits at over 2,500 feet on the crest of Afton Mountain in Nelson County. Built in 1912 by railroad magnate Major James H. Dooley as a gift for his wife, Sally Mae. Construction reportedly cost over $2 million in 1912 money, adjusted for inflation that exceeds $60 million today. Dooley modeled it on the Villa Medici in Rome. Marble exterior, Tiffany stained glass windows, hand-painted ceiling murals. Both Dooleys died within 2 years of each other in the 1920s. The property passed through multiple hands, and each new owner added less than they inherited. Virginia preservation groups have documented the decay across decades. Portions of the Tiffany glass are believed to still exist behind boarded openings. Residents of Waynesboro and Afton describe the palace at dusk as one of the most unsettling sights in the valley. A $60 million monument to love, crumbling on a mountaintop, with no one coming to save it. A marble palace rotting above the clouds is hard to forget. But the next estate sits in the low country of southeastern Virginia, and what makes it creepy has nothing to do with architecture. Number 13. In Richmond, along a street that once formed the commercial spine of the domestic slave trade, stands a building known as the Crenshaw House. It served as a holding facility where enslaved people were imprisoned before being sold. Richmond was the largest slave trading market in the Upper South. An estimated 300,000 enslaved people were sold through the city between 1800 and 1865. The Crenshaw House held them. Barred windows still visible from the street. Basement holding cells confirmed by architectural survey. The building now sits in a residential neighborhood with a standard property assessment. Neighbors live within 50 feet of walls that once held human beings in chains. The Richmond Times-Dispatch has reported on the ongoing tension between preservation and development at the site. a building where thousands were held for sale, now assessed alongside family homes. That is a kind of creepiness that requires no imagination. A house that held human beings for auction and now carries a residential tax assessment is horror in public records. But travel west to Bath County and you will find an estate whose owner disappeared under circumstances that were never resolved. Number 12. Bath County sits deep in the Allegheny Mountains. Population approximately 4,300, one of the least populated counties in Virginia. The forests are dense, some properties accessible only by single track lanes that dead end at a gate. In the late 20th century, a property owner in the county failed to appear for a scheduled meeting. The sheriff conducted a welfare check. The house was unlocked, belongings in place, a meal partially prepared, the vehicle in the drive. But the owner was gone. Virginia State Police were consulted. The Roanoke Times reported on the case. No body was recovered. No resolution was ever reached. The property sat in legal limbo for years while courts attempted to determine ownership. Locals in Bath County speak about the estate with avoidance rather than curiosity. Everyone in a county of 4,300 knows which house it is. An estate where the owner vanished into the mountains and the mountains gave back. Nothing is a silence that settles into a community permanently. But the next property sits in full view of a wealthy suburban road, and what happened there played out on the national stage. Number 11. Hickory Hill is a historic estate in McLean, Fairfax County. Built in the 1870s on several acres of landscaped ground in one of the wealthiest residential areas in America. Robert F. Kennedy purchased the property with his wife Ethel in 1957. They raised their 11 children there. Hickory Hill hosted policy discussions and diplomatic gatherings throughout the 1960s. Then came June of 1968. Kennedy was assassinated in Los Angeles. The grief that followed settled into the walls of Hickory Hill like damp into stone. Ethel Kennedy remained at the property for decades afterward. Local McLean residents describe Hickory Hill not as haunted, but as heavy. A property where the historical record is so saturated with loss that driving past it feels different from driving past any other house on the road. An estate synonymous with political assassination in the wealthiest suburb of Washington carries a gravity that never fades. But head south into the Piedmont, and you will find a property where the creepiness comes from what the owners did to the land. Number 10. In the horse country of Fauquier County, where estates routinely sell for $5 million or more, a property sits on land that the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality has flagged for contamination. The rolling pastures look pristine from the road. The fences are painted white. But beneath the surface, decades of agricultural chemical application left a toxic signature in the soil and groundwater. State records document elevated pesticide residue. Neighboring property owners reported contamination in their private wells. County Health Department advisories followed. Laboratory testing confirmed concentrations exceeding safe thresholds for residential use. The estate remains assessed in the millions. Each transaction required environmental disclosure. Each buyer accepted the liability. Meanwhile, families on adjacent properties cannot drink their own water. A Fauquier County resident described it to a local outlet as living next to something beautiful that is poisoning you slowly. An estate that poisoned its neighbors while its value kept climbing is a modern horror dressed in white fences. But the next property carries a darkness far older and far more embedded in Virginia soil. Number 9. Bacon's Castle stands on a rural road in Surry County, built around 1665, the oldest documented brick dwelling in North America in the Jacobean style. Named after Nathaniel Bacon, whose followers seized it during the armed rebellion of 1676. Surrey County today has a median household income of roughly $45,000. Preservation: Virginia owns and maintains the property. Archaeological excavations on the grounds have uncovered the foundations of slave quarters and human remains. The bones of people who lived and died here were pulled from the earth by researchers and cataloged in university archives. Visitors after dusk describe a silence that is not peaceful. 360 years of continuous occupation, armed rebellion, enslavement, excavated remains. All of it held inside a single Jacobean brick house on a back road in one of the poorest counties in Virginia. A house from 1665 where human remains were pulled from the earth carries an unease nothing else can replicate. But the next estate is barely 50 years old, and what happened inside it is documented in county police files. Number 8. In a gated community in Northern Virginia, behind a brick wall and wrought iron entrance, sits a property that Fairfax County Police visited more times in a single calendar year than any other private residence in the jurisdiction. Court records filed in the Fairfax County Circuit Court document the charges. Local news covered the proceedings in detail. The property is valued in excess of $4 million. Neighbors are executives and senior federal employees. After the arrest and trial, the property was listed for sale. It did not sell at the asking price. It did not sell after the first reduction. Neighbors told a Washington Post reporter that the address itself had become a liability. The property eventually sold at a discount of approximately 32%. Number 7. An estate where the value dropped by a third overnight is the kind of story estate agents never want to tell. But the next property never lost its value at all. And that might be the most disturbing thing about it. Carter's Grove Plantation sits along the James River in James City County. Built in the 1750s by Carter Burwell, grandson of Robert King Carter, one of the wealthiest men in colonial Virginia. 750 acres on the James River. In 1963, the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation purchased the property and opened it to the public. For decades, visitors could tour the main house and walk through reconstructed slave quarters. Historians praised the site as one of the most honest public presentations of enslaved life in the South. Then in 2003, Colonial Williamsburg closed Carter's Grove. In 2014, the foundation sold it to a private buyer for $15.3 million. The gates closed. Researchers were turned away. Preservation groups denied entry. Local historians in Williamsburg have described the closure as a disappearance. Not of the building, of the story. The house still stands. The river still runs past it. But the history that was once shared is now locked behind a gate that cost $15 million to close. A plantation whose slave history was shared for 40 years and then locked away behind a private gate is a story about what money can make disappear. But the next property is about what money cannot fix, regardless of how many engineers are hired. Number 6. In Albemarle County, west of Charlottesville, an estate valued at over $3 million is slowly splitting apart. The Charlottesville Daily Progress reported on the property after neighbors raised concerns. County building inspectors confirmed active subsidence, foundation cracks exceeding 2 inches in width. Engineers determined the underlying clay soil was expanding and contracting at rates the structure could not tolerate. Remediation efforts cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Steel piers were driven to bedrock. The house continued to move. Doors no longer close properly. Floors are no longer level. One neighbor described it to a local reporter as watching something alive try to shake a building off its back. $3 million on paper, and the ground refuses to cooperate. But the next property has walls that have held perfectly for almost 2 centuries. And what those walls witnessed is far worse than any crack in the foundation. Number 5. Berry Hill Plantation stands in Halifax County in the southern Piedmont. Built in the 1840s by James Coles Bruce. 8 massive Doric columns line the front facade, modeled on the Parthenon in Athens. Census records from 1850 and 1860 document that Bruce held over 500 enslaved people across his properties. The labor of those 500 people built Berry Hill. They quarried the stone, fired the bricks, and carved the columns. When they died, they were buried in a cemetery on the grounds, partially mapped, but never fully excavated. Halifax County today has a median household income of around $37,000. One of the poorest counties in Virginia. Walk the grounds and the slave cemetery is there. Modest markers, uneven ground, trees growing between the stones, 100 feet from the Parthenon columns. The most beautiful plantation house in Virginia, and the people who built it buried in its shadow. A weight that no Greek columns can disguise. But the next property carries something locals say you feel the moment you turn onto the drive. Number 4. Near the town of Clifton in Fairfax County, an overpass on Colchester Road crosses a set of abandoned railroad tracks. Locals call it the Bunny Man Bridge. The name comes from 2 documented incidents in 1970. Fairfax County Police reports from October of that year describe a man dressed in a white rabbit costume who threatened passers-by with an axe. The reports were filed. The suspect was never identified. Historian Brian A. Conley researched the original police files. The Fairfax County Public Library has archived his findings. The estates surrounding Clifton sell for $3, $4, $5 million and more. Local estate agents have told the Fairfax County Times that properties near the bridge take longer to sell. Buyers decline late afternoon showings. They do not want to drive past the overpass after dark. 50-year-old police reports about a man in a rabbit costume. Multi-million-dollar homes where owners still check the locks at sunset. The documented record is almost absurdly thin, but the feeling it created is thick enough to affect property values. Million-dollar homes still shaped by a 1970 police report is a peculiar strain of Virginia unease. But the next estate needs no legend. The court filings run to hundreds of pages. Number 3. Along the Tidewater coast, where the rivers flatten into marshland and the colonial land grants were measured in thousands of acres, an estate has been trapped in litigation for over 3 generations. The dispute began when a property owner died without a clear will. Competing heirs filed claims in the county circuit court. Rulings were issued, appealed, reversed, and reissued. New heirs were born. Original claimants died. The University of Virginia School of Law has referenced heir property disputes of this kind as endemic to the Tidewater, where colonial land grants created ownership structures that modern courts struggle to untangle. The estate is assessed at several $million. The house is intact. The grounds maintained by a court-appointed trustee, but no one lives there. No one can. A local attorney described it to the Virginia Pilot as a house that belongs to everyone, and therefore to no one. Drive past on a Tuesday afternoon, and you will see mowed grass, trimmed hedges, shuttered windows. A house in perfect exterior condition with no human being inside. It has looked this way for years. A mansion in court longer than its claimants have been alive is horror told in billable hours. But our second entry is a property where the horror was in the rooms themselves. Number 2. In the foothills of the Blue Ridge, A large stone building sits at the end of a long paved drive. It was constructed in the early 20th century and operated for decades as an institution for people with mental illness and developmental disabilities. State records from the Virginia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services document its patient population and the conditions inside. At its peak, the institution housed over 200 residents. Inspection reports from the mid-20th century noted overcrowding, understaffing, and conditions below acceptable standards. Some patients were confined for years, some never left. The institution closed as Virginia transitioned to community-based care. A private buyer acquired the building. Wards became bedrooms. The intake area became a grand foyer. A pool was installed where the exercise yard had been. A tennis court laid over the service road used by ambulances. The property is now assessed at several $1 million. A county resident told the Roanoke Times that driving past it feels like watching someone wear a dead person's clothes. The stone is the same stone. The windows are the same windows. Only the curtains have changed. A building where people were locked away for decades now has a swimming pool and a tennis court. But our final entry is the property that residents across an entire Virginia county agree is the most disturbing estate in the state. And the reason is not what happened in the past. It is what is happening right now. Number 1. The property sits at the end of a gravel road in a county where the nearest traffic light is 20 minutes away. The main house was built in the 1920s, over 9,000 square feet, assessed at over $4 million. From the county road, you can see the roofline above the tree line. That is all you can see. County records show the property has changed hands 7 times since 2000. Each ownership period shorter than the last. The most recent lasted 11 months. Successive real estate listings grow increasingly sparse. The first described it as a rare opportunity. The 7th listed only the acreage and the square footage, no descriptive language at all. The county sheriff's office has responded to calls there on multiple occasions. Fire and rescue records document at least 3 emergency responses, none classified as criminal, all of them in the public record. A contractor hired to assess the interior for a prospective buyer described what he found to a local newspaper. Load-bearing walls altered without permits, rooms subdivided and reconnected in configurations that served no functional purpose, a staircase leading to a landing that opened onto a wall, a hallway narrowing to less than 2 feet before ending at a locked door. The basement contained a room with no windows, no ventilation, and a steel door that locked from the outside. The county building inspector confirmed that alterations had accumulated across several decades and multiple owners. No single renovation plan. Each successive owner modifying what the last one built, none of them completing anything coherent. The property is currently listed again. The asking price is $3.8 million. The listing has been active for over 400 days. The gravel road to the house is lined with black walnut trees. Their roots have buckled the surface in places. The canopy closes overhead about halfway down the drive. By the time you reach the house, the county road behind you is no longer visible. The front door is painted red. The paint is peeling, and the door is open.